Chapter 3. An examination of fundamental inquiries. A remarkable corroboration for the aforementioned description of the gross and subtle sheaths, koshas, is provided by A.J. Davis, a renowned clairvoyant from the West, who recounted the vision he witnessed while observing the physical frame of a noble woman at the moment of her bodily dissolution. Having ascertained the precise time of the woman's passing, and having seated himself in a state of serene composure conducive to clairvoyant vision, he observed the following. The gross organs of the woman's body had reached a state where they could no longer serve as instruments for the functions of the soul. Nevertheless, her inner senses resisted the withdrawal of the vital force, prana shakti. Her limbs struggled, unwilling to relinquish their inherent powers. Her blood vessels fought, reluctant to surrender their capacity to carry the blood, and her neural centers, including the brain, resisted separation from the sensations and intellectual currents with which they had been intertwined. It appeared as though the soul and the body, like two friends who had lived together in deep affection for a great length of time, were now fiercely resisting the inevitable compulsion to part ways. To the ordinary observer, this internal struggle occurring within the body appeared to be a most agonizing state of death. Yet, in reality, these outward manifestations were not indicative of suffering or sorrow. They signified nothing more than the conclusion of the long-standing partnership between the soul and the body. At this precise moment, the region of the body's head appeared as though it were suddenly enveloped by a soft, luminous cloud of radiance. At that very moment, the upper regions of the brain began to throb, and the vital energies, which had previously been flowing downward, were redirected upward. The cranial region attained a state of profound tranquility. These phenomena were perceptible only to subtle vision. They remained invisible to ordinary observers. Within the soft, sacred cloud that had formed around the head, it appeared as though another head was taking shape. As its form coalesced, the radiance of the surrounding cloud seemed to diminish. Just as the cranial region had been newly formed on the subtle plane, other parts of the physical body, such as the neck, skin, and breasts, also began to take shape within the subtle body. Thus, in the construction of this subtle body, it appeared that the inner qualities of the woman's consciousness were the primary architects. The deficiencies and deformities that had afflicted her physical body appeared to be rectified and made whole within the subtle realm. Consequently, her soul's inherent energies found the necessary conditions to establish a harmonious structure within the subtle body, one unhindered by the physical body's defects. While this subtle body was being independently constructed, those observing the physical body perceived it merely as a gruesome and agonizing state of death. In reality, however, this was not the case. These phenomena were nothing more than the vital energies and the soul's energies withdrawing from the lower limbs, ascending to the brain, and from there rising upward to inhabit the subtle body. The soul ascended directly upward from the head of the corpse. However, before detaching itself completely from the physical body, a vital electric current, resembling a connecting cord, flowed between the feet of the emerging subtle body and the head of the corpse lying beneath it. In truth, death is nothing other than rebirth. It is simply the process of shedding the material body to attain a superior form. In every aspect, from the umbilical cord to all other details, the process of this subtle body emerging mirrored precisely the process of a child being born. Just before the subtle umbilical cord connecting this subtle body was severed, a vital spark of life force energy surged into the corpse. This is precisely why the physical body does not immediately undergo decay the moment the soul departs. It is a scriptural injunction that funeral rites must be performed only after observing the onset of signs of physical decomposition. In our scriptures, the vital air that thus lingers within the corpse is known as Dhananjaya Vayu.
The moment her soul liberated itself from the gross physical body to which it had been firmly bound, it appeared as though it began to draw in subtle elements from the surrounding atmosphere. To the eye, this subtle body bore the exact form and contours of the gross physical body that had been left behind. Yet in every respect, it appeared to be imbued with an enhanced beauty. Despite this heightened beauty, her earthly characteristics and physical features did not appear to have undergone any alteration. Had her friends been granted a vision of her subtle form, they would have instantly recognized her identity.
It is certain that they would remark, "Madam, you appear so healthy now." In this context, it is worth recounting a vision that Mrs. Neal experienced in the Kailash region. In that region, Mrs. Neal observed a woman who lay inert and unconscious, like a lifeless object, for an entire week, after which she revived. Upon separating from her physical body, the woman was astonished to discover that her newly formed subtle body possessed a remarkable lightness, agility, and the power of rapid locomotion. Merely by the sheer force of her will to reach a specific destination, she would traverse rivers, walking upon the water's surface, pass through solid walls, and instantly arrive at her intended location. However, there was one task she found herself unable to accomplish. Wherever she went, a slender, ethereal cord, resembling a strand of the sky itself, remained firmly tethered to both her feet and the inert physical body lying motionless behind her. This cord would stretch and extend to follow her wherever she traveled. Indeed, at times, she would even stumble and fall because of it. She was utterly unable to untie this cord. This phenomenon aligns with the belief held by the people of the Kailash region, specifically the concept that the Vijnana Maya kosha, the subtle sheath of intellect and consciousness, accompanies the jiva, the individual soul, across successive lifetimes. This belief is further exemplified by a specific custom in that region. When a monastic head, a Matadipati, passes away, his spiritual seat, or pita, is left vacant, as it is believed that he will be reborn and subsequently return to assume leadership of that very seat once again. Mrs. Neal has in fact documented an incident involving the reincarnation of such a monastic head. From his earliest childhood, a young man named Mikar would experience vivid visions while fully awake, visions of scenes entirely alien to his native village, sand dunes, wool-felt tents, and monasteries perched atop mountains. One day, while walking along quite by chance, he encountered a caravanserai. There he beheld the baggage laden upon the camels tethered within the enclosure, as well as the principal leader of the traveling pilgrims. The very instant his eyes fell upon this scene, the full knowledge of his past life flooded back into his consciousness. Recognizing that the pilgrims were members of his own monastic order and identifying the prominent figure among them as the very individual who had served as his chief disciple during his previous life as the aged Swami, he provided them with appropriate corroborating signs. The pilgrims, having journeyed specifically to locate the place where their Pita Dipati, spiritual head, had taken rebirth, acknowledged him as their rightful spiritual leader and escorted him back to the monastery with all due honors and ceremonial regalia. A compelling testimony supporting the evidential inquiries presented in the second chapter can be found in the writings of the Western researcher Sir Oliver Lodge, specifically in his book titled Beyond Physics. The Akasha, the ether that permeates the entire cosmos, is in reality teeming with, pulsating with, and ceaselessly flowing with vital and mental entities. This vast expanse of the sky, replete with manifold energies, is grounded in the supreme consciousness, Param Chaitanya. It may be said that the divine play of supreme consciousness unfolds within this boundless ether, and that the manifestation of consciousness we perceive in our mundane lives constitutes but a mere atom of that infinite cosmic drama. The Supreme Being, Param Purusha, permeates all space,
pervading, sustaining, harmonizing, and guiding the entirety of existence. One significant implication of the theory of relativity is that what ordinarily appears to us as inert matter is in reality not inert at all, but merely a manifestation, an evolutionary form of energy. Caught within the varying velocities and intensities of this energy, the particles of the ether assume an appearance that resembles inert matter. Fundamentally, all that is termed matter is subsumed within the ether, and the ether, in turn, is subsumed within the imperishable reality, akshara. In this context, the scriptural dictum from the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, "There is nothing higher than the imperishable," merits particular attention. Further corroboration is found in the work of the Western scientist and researcher James Jeans, specifically in his book The Mysterious Universe. He posits that the three spatial dimensions, length, breadth, and height, must be integrated and perceived as constituting a single entity, possessing 4 dimensions. Furthermore, he observes that upon examining any individual atom, one discovers a structure resembling a miniature cosmos, a central sun in the form of a proton, orbited by electrons that correspond to planets. All spiritual inquiries and contemplative investigations ultimately culminate in the realization of pure, unadulterated consciousness. Similarly, even the ether, though termed boundless, possesses its own inherent limits. When viewed introspectively, it is perceived as an entity whose nature can be inferred through various dimensional parameters, such as 4 dimensions, 7 dimensions, and so forth. It is further asserted that this boundless expanse is in reality ever expanding, and that to truly comprehend the dynamics of the universe, one must transcend the conventional parameters of space and time. To illustrate the nature of dimensions, that illusion or garment, kanshuka, through which reality becomes perceptible, the following analogy may be offered. If an ant is placed in the center of a square, a space defined by length and width, it will remain confined to circling within those 2 dimensions. However, should that ant sprout wings, it would ascend into the dimension of height, thereby breaking free from the 2-dimensional enclosure that had previously restricted it. Similarly, if a Mahatma were to be confined within a room defined by the 3 dimensions of length, width, and height, he would utilize the 4th dimension to exit without ever having to break the lock. Great sages such as Vedavyasa, who have transcended the dimension of time, perceive and describe the future Kalki avatar as if they have already witnessed it firsthand.
V.M. Bachara, a Western physiological researcher, describes the functioning of the subtle sheaths, or sukshma koshas, within our gross physical body in his book Human Reflexology as follows. When external vibrations, such as light entering the eyes or sound entering the ears, stimulate their respective sense organs, the nerve cells within those organs undergo a transformation. Consequently, a form of energy, akin to electrical current flowing through a telegraph wire, travels along the nerves to the brain. Within the brain, the nerve impulses undergo a transformation that lies somewhere between radioactivity and a photochemical process, acting as a precise response to the signal received from the sensory organs, jnanendriyas. The brain then generates an electrical impulse that stimulates the motor organs, karmendriyas, channeling it through the appropriate nerve pathways. Every energy manifesting in the external environment flows into the brain in this electrical manner. It appears plausible that this flow of energy may extend beyond the physical body itself. Thus, the concept that thoughts can flow from one person's brain to another's, much like a telegraphic signal, becomes entirely conceivable. When viewed in this light, it becomes abundantly clear that the energies originating in the external environment are in fact the very forces that establish themselves within our physical bodies. This realization reveals the profound inner significance behind the ancient spiritual practices involving the worship of the presiding deities of the sense organs, such as the sun god, which have been observed since time immemorial.